6 Flamingos at the Russian military command post. The occupation has begun in Donetsk. In Rostov, convicts escaped from their convoy so they wouldn't be sent to Mala-Tokmachka. Tanks are already near Kaliningrad. The CIA director did not convince Putin. Propagandists are shocked by the consequences and are demanding that Putin stop the war.
Russia treated Ukraine, in my view, with carelessness. This carelessness turned into a tragedy.
Ilya Remeslo has switched sides to Navalny's camp. Potap and Nastya supported Russia, while gas stations in the Russian Federation are diluting gasoline with water. The young generation of Russians gave a frank answer to Putin. Hello everyone, I'm Karina Kleishon, and this is the program In Trend. I've gathered a lot of interesting news for you. Believe me, we will have plenty to discuss today. So let's begin. As the military says, gathering military personnel for a meeting in Donetsk is asking for incoming fire. And yesterday, in temporarily occupied Donetsk, that's exactly what happened. Donetsk was under a massive attack. More than 10 explosions were heard. Rumor has it that it was the Flamingos. As the Russians themselves write, the command post of the occupiers' 51st Army in Donetsk was hit.
Tamanka and Universitetskaya have been blocked off. There are a lot of ambulances. They are carrying out the guys in body bags. What kind of people do you have to be to expose your soldiers like that? And most importantly, who is informing the Ukrainians like this? Azdan waits a collaborator. Wow!
It is known that the commander, his deputy, and other Russian armed forces military personnel were killed. The Russian publication Izvestia initially published news about the death of 10 people, but then quickly deleted it. The propagandists, of course, are lying that they hit the Donetsk city shopping center, but in reality, the strikes were on the territory of an unfinished residential complex, which was being built by Yanukovych's son and which has been standing unfinished since 2014.
The strike was on the underground parking lot of an unfinished residential complex belonging to the developer Mako Holding, which is owned by Viktor Yanukovych's eldest son. 6 missiles hit the underground parking lot. Presumably, there was a command post of the Russian armed forces there. There were no civilian casualties.
Interestingly, debris from a Scalp missile was later found, the technology for which was transferred to Ukraine. I talked about this in the last episode. And in Russia, all major Lukoil refineries have stopped their operations due to Ukrainian drone attacks. They will have less gasoline now, and the queues will be even longer.
In general, guys, just so you understand, this is a queue for a gas station that's about 5 kilometers long.
People can't fill up their cars completely because there are restrictions at gas stations, and they no longer fill them to the brim. So stalling in the middle of the road due to an empty tank is standard practice. In Moscow, there's even a courier delivery service for gasoline for such cases, or for those who don't want to stand in kilometer-long queues. But such a service is more expensive than the gasoline itself. Moreover, the gasoline shortage isn't just at gas stations. At a floating gas station on the Lena River, boats have lined up in a huge queue for liters.
Here is the store. Some kind of line was occupying it. And just specifically,
even in those remote locations, you will still find long queues. But what they are actually filling their tanks with is hard to call gasoline. It is so heavily diluted that it barely qualifies as fuel. Because of this poor quality, the number of frustrated clients at these service stations has sharply increased, as people are forced to return again and again. And in the Saratov region, they decided not to bother at all and just dilute the gasoline with water. One of the drivers complained that after refueling, the engine started misfiring. The guy decided to check what was wrong. He started draining the fuel and there was water. Only after draining 3 1.5-liter bottles of who knows what did the gasoline start flowing. And the governor of the Voronezh region figured out how to help Russians. He recommended that residents simply give up their personal cars. He says that the shortage will continue for a while, so it's better to use public transport. Such are the realities of an oil and gas superpower. Everything is going according to plan. Thank you very much for your son. Congratulations. These were the exact words the head of Sochi used when presenting a posthumous award to the parents of a young man who died in the war.
Loss, of course, cannot be offset by anything, but nevertheless, he deserved this. The memory of him will always be preserved in the city. It will be not only about him, but about all the heroes who go to defend our motherland. Therefore, in this solemn atmosphere, I will probably present it to his mother.
Thank you.
In loving memory. And everything that depends on us in terms of help and support, you can always count on us, always reach out to us. And we are always by your side. Thank you.
Thank you.
My heartfelt congratulations. Thank you very much for your son.
And he even offered his heartfelt congratulations. But this is brilliant. So to speak, a brief summary of the authorities' attitude towards the fighters from the heart. Friends, I am really looking forward to your comments on this matter. Write them down. You know, I am always in touch. I read everything, and of course I reply to you, so I'm waiting. And also don't forget to like this video, because this small action from you is a big support for the entire V-Trendy team. A brief look at advertising in the Russian Federation and Trust. The hero of an advertising campaign for recruiting cooks, Danila Stakov, who was sent to the front and whose photo was used in an advertisement for service as a cook, stated that the contract conditions did not match reality. Despite promises of rear echelon work, mobilized personnel are being sent to assault units. Can you imagine? Russian authorities are using Astakov's image taken back in 2020 without his consent. Astakov himself was mobilized, sustained an injury, underwent treatment, and then went back to fight again. And now, a truly unique situation has occurred in the Rostov region. Today, convicts who were being transported to Ukraine as cannon fodder escaped from the Russian military. They escaped right at a traffic light. After escaping, they started carrying out their own special operation. At first, there was information about an attack on a taxi driver, but the driver likely survived, and later reports emerged that one Russian had allegedly been killed with a knife. Locals are being urged not to leave their homes. The convicts just really didn't want to go to Malotokmachka. Politico has revealed the purpose of the CIA director's visit to Moscow. During his stay in Moscow, John Ratcliffe warned the Russians about the unacceptability of escalation against the Baltic states. The high-ranking official urged Russian officials not to take steps that could lead to a conflict with NATO countries. Separately, he urged Moscow to stop supplying Iran with weapons and defense technologies. Meanwhile, US intelligence warns that Russia may be preparing provocations against the Baltic states as early as the coming weeks. This move is reminiscent of the events leading up to the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2021. After all, back then, the CIA director also visited Putin to prevent the invasion and warned of the consequences. Trump gathered the entire US security bloc immediately after Ratcliffe's return from Moscow. The meeting lasted more than 3 hours. And here is why the trip did not work. As the Estonian foreign minister says, for their country, the assessment of the military threat from Russia has not changed after the meeting. The Russian Foreign Ministry also stated that Russia will attack Britain and targets on its territory with missiles if Ukraine strikes Russia with British weapons. And this threat could be real following Russia's hybrid attacks on Europe. And the Polish Ministry of Defense reported that the army is moving tanks to the border with the Russian Federation. The first 28 have already been sent closer to the Kaliningrad region. The situation is escalating. Meanwhile, Russians themselves are not very happy about this special military operation of yours anymore. For example, Russian journalist Maxim Shevchenko called the special military operation a trap and said that Putin is not pulling off this war because Russia is lagging behind in technology.
Ukraine has turned into a trap for Russia into which the West simply lured it. In my view, Russia treated Ukraine with carelessness. This carelessness has turned into a tragedy. Today, we are in a trap from which we would very much like to escape with dignity. The West possesses, as there is such a concept in chess, tempo. The West possesses technological superiority. Ukraine, on the other hand, can go to Taiwan, to the company NVIDIA, and say, we want to buy $1 billion worth of chips. But we cannot. We simply cannot, and that is all. They have access to the most advanced artificial intelligence. They have access to the most advanced microchips in the world.
Moreover, propagandist Oleg Kashin does not support Putin's rhetoric. After all, now they are not saving the Ukrainian Russian-speaking people, but are speaking directly at the Kremlin level about war and terror against the Ukrainian population. And Russians see the consequences of such actions.
Putin said, if you saw, yes, about the exotic proposals that are coming from the Ukrainian side to end the war, we will not end it. And so, yes, the coolest thing that impressed everyone is that, yes, we are striking Ukrainian cities, Kiev and other Ukrainian cities, so that in a way it would be easier for our fighters on the front line to fight. That is, there is no longer even any rhetoric about us liberating anyone. Yes, strikes are being deliberately carried out on Ukrainian cities where civilians live. And this no longer even causes any, again, cognitive dissonance on the part of the Russian authorities.
And on television, in one of the shows, it turned out that those very Russian-speaking Ukrainians didn't even want Putin to save them. They fiercely hate Russia, can you imagine? For some reason, Russians are even shocked by this.
Language is absolutely no guarantee of a good attitude towards Russia, towards the Russian Federation. There are plenty of examples in history. It's a code, Maxim. Listen, the terrorists of the Irish Republican Army, while preparing the most brutal terrorist attacks against the British, spoke English among themselves. Therefore, in this case, just look at how many banned battalions there are. I won't list them. The most radical ones, they are all Russian-speaking. The most venomous Ukrainian bloggers running Telegram channels do it in Russian. And the most painful thing is that because they know our psychology, they hate us. It's not so that we would hear it. It is precisely the Russian-speaking ones who hate us fiercely.
What then are Russians dying for at the front? They never said it in the studio. The idea that Putin has completely failed and dragged Russia into a quagmire is gradually becoming mainstream across all of Russia. And Ilya Remeslo, who prided himself on the fact that a case was opened against Navalny based on his denunciation, is now shouting the Navalny slogan from behind bars, "Russia will be free."
It was interrupted. Do you understand the court's decision? We agreed with the court. The decision was left unchanged. This decision is clear to me. I accept it.
Thank you all very much for your attention.
Everything will be fine.
Russia will be free.
By the way, after he was forcibly sent to a psychiatric hospital, the court found him sane. He is accused of spreading fakes about the army. For some reason, the court decided not to mention the fact that Remeslo had assured everyone that Putin would die as early as September. And yet, that is the reason. Friends, let's see which city today's episode has reached. Write in which city you are watching from. It will be interesting to learn the geography of our viewers and, of course, your opinion on what is happening. A few characters have knocked from the bottom of the star-studded barrel, Potap and Nastya Kamenskykh. They mocked all the people who criticized them for using the Russian language. They showed a video where they sarcastically apologized for freedom. At the same time, not long ago, Nastya Kamenskykh assured everyone that she is loyal to Ukraine and that she would never return to the Russian language. What do you think about this couple? What question would you ask Putin? That is exactly what they asked Russians on the streets to understand the people's real attitude toward the president. And as one might notice, young people in the swamps think much more critically than the older generation.
I would like to scold. I would really like to offer some praise, but honestly, if we were back somewhere in the early 2000s, or whenever those initial changes were just starting to take hold, then that version of Russia, perhaps yes, I could see it. But now I'd rather scold because there are more and more problems, and all of this is weighing heavily. You think, I'm only 20, but what happens next? I would like to ask when things in the country will finally improve, when everything will get better. I would like that.
It seems to me, as a citizen, I have very little chance of crossing paths with him. But if I were to ask a question, then, I feel like I'll either get hit with a huge fine or I'll be put in jail. I would just like to feel stability in my adult life. I don't feel that at all right now. The ground is crumbling beneath my feet and I'm not sure what will happen next year. I don't know, I've been living in this state of limbo for the last couple of years, ever since I moved to Yekaterinburg. It feels very unpleasant and I would really like for this to end.
Well, I probably wouldn't scold or praise. Definitely not.
Well, if I were to scold, I'd probably be labeled a foreign agent, and I probably wouldn't praise either.